All right, so today we're going to be tackling this uh, pretty wild question that Andrew Tate posed.
Yeah.
What happens to the economy if Bitcoin becomes like the single best investment,
Right.
like the best investment, to the point where it makes everything else look kind of pathetic?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question, especially coming from someone like Andrew Tate, who's known for making these kinds of like outlandish statements. But
Right.
when you actually kind of dig into it, I think it reveals some like really legitimate economic concerns.
Yeah, and he uses this great anecdote, right?
Yeah.
He says, a friend of his was trying to get him to invest in a luxury hotel in Switzerland.
Oh, wow.
I mean, come on, who doesn't want to get in on that action, right?
Right, exactly.
Sounds like a pretty sweet deal.
The kind of opportunity a lot of people would jump at.
Yeah.
But he's saying that he turned it down
Yeah.
because he just sees Bitcoin as that much of a better investment.
Yeah, so we're not just talking about theory here, right?
Right.
This is like actually impacting people's real-world decisions.
It's exactly.
Okay, so let's unpack Tate's argument a little bit.
Sure.
It seems like his main concern is that if everyone just piles into Bitcoin, right,
Right.
it's going to starve other asset classes of capital.
Right.
So less money is going to be flowing into, starting businesses,
Yep.
building hotels,
Yeah,
developing new technologies, that kind of thing.
exactly. It's this idea that if the returns on Bitcoin are so much better than everything else,
Yeah.
it's just going to drain all the investment
Yeah.
from the rest of the economy.
Right, and then you just have everyone sitting on piles of Bitcoin while the rest of the world crumbles.
Exactly. Why bother building a hotel
Right.
when you can just buy more Bitcoin? That's
Yeah.
kind of his concern.
Okay, so that's Tate's kind of doom and gloom scenario.
Right.
But then we have Safety and Amos, who wrote the Bitcoin standard.
Yeah.
He comes in with this pretty compelling counter-argument.
Yeah, Amos is obviously like a well-known Bitcoin advocate, but
Yeah.
he actually agrees with Pate that Bitcoin is the best investment right now. Okay.
But he thinks this outperformance that we're seeing,
Yeah.
it's kind of a transitory phase. Like, it's not going to last forever.
Okay.
And he thinks it's happening because Bitcoin is exposing the flaws
Right.
in our current financial system.
So it's kind of like a correction, a shakeup of the old way of doing things.
Exactly.
It's like Bitcoin is king, but maybe not forever. Is that kind of what he's saying?
Yeah, you could think of it that way.
Okay.
He basically argues that once Bitcoin replaces what he calls crappy forms of money,
Okay.
like fiat currencies that are manipulated by central banks,
Right, right.
he thinks its returns will stabilize to a more modest 1 to 5% per year.
Okay.
And he actually thinks this will be a good thing for other asset classes.
Wait, so help me understand that.
Sure.
Why would slower growth in Bitcoin be good for things like real estate or stocks?
Okay, so right now,
Yeah.
Bitcoin is so attractive
Yeah.
because it has the potential for these massive gains.
But Amos is saying that once it establishes itself as this kind of stable,
Right.
reliable store of value,
Yeah.
that volatility will diminish.
Okay.
And with less potential for those like rapid gains, investors are naturally going to start looking for returns elsewhere.
Oh, so it's like Bitcoin is the shiny new toy right now.
Yeah, exactly.
But eventually people are going to kind of get over that and they'll rediscover the value of these other assets.
Right. And all of a sudden,
Yeah.
building that hotel in Switzerland doesn't sound so bad
Right.
compared to, 1 to 5% returns on Bitcoin.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Hmm.
Another big point of contention between Tate and Amos
Yeah.
is this idea of deflation.
Right.
Tate is very vocal about his fears of a Bitcoin-induced deflationary spiral,
Yep.
where like people hoard Bitcoin, waiting for prices to drop further,
Yeah.
and then the whole economy just grinds to a halt.
Right. The classic deflation equals economic doom.
Exactly. But Amos doesn't seem too
Yeah.
worried about that, does he?
He actually thinks deflation can be a good thing.
Oh, wow. Okay, how so?
Well, he distinguishes between bad deflation, which is caused by a collapsing money supply,
Okay.
and good deflation, which he argues is often a sign of technological progress and increased productivity.
Okay. I'm intrigued to break down this good deflation for me.
So imagine,
Yeah.
as technology advances,
Right.
we can produce goods and services more efficiently,
All right.
which means lower production costs,
Yep.
which can translate into lower prices for consumers. That's deflation.
Oh.
And Amos argues that this kind of deflation is actually beneficial because it increases purchasing power.
Oh, okay.
It allows people to access more goods and services for their money.
So it's not about prices crashing across the board.
Right.
It's more like a natural lowering of prices as things just become cheaper to produce.
Exactly. And he points out that this has happened throughout history.
Okay.
Think about how much cheaper and more powerful computers are today than they were a few decades ago.
Yeah.
That's deflation in action. And it's generally been a good thing for consumers.
Okay, that makes sense. But what about people on fixed incomes? Wouldn't they be hurt by falling prices?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And it kind of highlights the complexity of this issue.
Right.
It's not as simple as deflation is good or deflation is bad.
Right.
There are always going to be winners and losers in any kind of economic shift.
Okay, so we have Tate worried about this Bitcoin-fueled investment drought and a deflationary death spiral.
Right.
And then we have Amos arguing that it's all just part of this transition
Right.
to a sounder, more stable financial system.
Yeah.
Feels like there's a lot of gray area here.
Yeah, there's definitely nuance to it.
Yeah.
And to kind of get a more complete picture, I think we need to bring in another perspective.
Yeah, absolutely.
A prominent Bitcoin advocate who goes by the name Stacker.
Okay, bring on Stacker.
All right.
What is their take on this whole Bitcoin versus the world debate?
So Stacker actually shares some of Tate's concerns,
Okay.
but comes to very different conclusions.
Interesting.
They argue that Bitcoin will force businesses to become much more efficient and innovative.
Oh, so instead of stifling traditional investments, Bitcoin could actually raise the bar
Exactly.
for what constitutes a worthwhile investment.
Yeah, they see it as a form of natural selection for businesses.
Okay.
Like if someone can just hold Bitcoin
Right.
and watch its value grow over time,
Yeah.
businesses will have to offer compelling reasons
Yeah.
for people to invest in them instead.
So it's not about Bitcoin destroying traditional businesses. It's more about forcing them to adapt and prove their worth.
Exactly.
I like that. Okay, and this applies to real estate as well.
Yeah, they argue that if people shift their investments
Right.
from real estate to Bitcoin, property prices could fall
Okay.
to reflect true market demand.
So a Bitcoin-fueled real estate correction
Right.
could actually make housing more affordable.
Yeah, that's the potential upside.
Interesting.
They think this would lead to a more efficient allocation of capital
Okay.
in the real estate market.
Makes sense. And we talked about Amos's prediction that Bitcoin will stabilize at 1 to 5% returns.
Yeah,
Stacker has a much grander vision for Bitcoin's future.
they do.
I think they said it would eventually hit like $10 million.
$10 million in today's terms.
Wow.
Yeah, they see that as the point at which Bitcoin's dominance as a store of value
Right.
will be firmly established.
Okay.
And then other investments will start looking more attractive again.
Okay, so $10 million, that's a mind-boggling number.
It is.
But here's what I'm wrestling with.
Sure.
If we're heading towards this deflationary world, as Annis and Stacker both seem to suggest,
Right.
will people even want to consume or invest at all?
That's a great question.
Yeah, I mean, if prices are constantly falling,
Right.
wouldn't it make sense to just wait for things to get even cheaper?
It's a very logical concern.
Yeah.
But Stacker believes that even in a deflationary world, people will still consume and invest.
Yeah.
Because they'll continue to value experiences, material comforts,
Yes.
supporting new ideas.
Right. It's not just about accumulating wealth.
Right.
It's about how that wealth translates into a fulfilling life.
Exactly.
Okay, I like that. All right, so let's just kind of recap where we are.
Sure.
We have Pate worried about Bitcoin stifling traditional investment,
Yeah.
creating this deflationary spiral.
Yep.
We have Amos seeing it as a necessary transition
Right.
to a healthier economic system
Uh-huh.
where Bitcoin eventually settles into a more modest growth pattern.
Yeah.
And then we have Stacker arguing that Bitcoin will force businesses to become more efficient
Right.
and could even make things like housing more affordable in the long run.
Exactly. A lot of different perspectives there.
Right. And it's important to note that none of these outcomes are guaranteed.
Of course not.
We're dealing with very complex systems
Absolutely.
and a lot of unknowns.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think what's clear is that Bitcoin is forcing us to kind of rethink our assumptions
Yeah,
about how the economy works
totally.
and what the future of value might look like.
Absolutely. Okay, so how do we start to make sense of all of this?
Well, to get a better grasp on the potential trajectory of Bitcoin and its impact on the markets, I think we need to dive into the current state of the Bitcoin market itself.
Okay, bring on the charts.
All right.
What are the technical analysts saying?
So there's a pretty interesting debate happening right now among traders
Okay.
about a potential shooting star pattern.
A shooting star.
Yeah,
This sounds ominous.
it can be.
Okay, so what is a shooting star pattern?
It's a candlestick pattern that can signal a potential reversal in trend.
Hmm.
It forms when you have a month of significant price increase,
Okay.
which is a big green candle on the chart,
Yeah.
followed by a red candle with a long upper wick.
So it's like Bitcoin shooting up in price, but then failing to hold those gains and
Yeah.
closing the month lower.
Oh.
Almost like it got rejected at that higher level.
That's a great way to visualize it.
Okay.
And what's making traders nervous
Yeah.
is that this pattern has historically preceded major market corrections.
Okay.
We saw similar formations in 2017
Mhm.
and 2021,
Right.
right before significant downturns.
Okay, so history might be rhyming here.
It might be.
But isn't it a bit early to be calling for a bear market?
Yeah, it's definitely possible this is just a temporary dip
Okay.
before Bitcoin resumes its upward trajectory.
Right, so the shooting star pattern might be a red herring?
It could be.
Are there any analysts who are still bullish on Bitcoin?
Definitely one example is Crypto Casey,
Okay.
a popular YouTuber who focuses on Bitcoin analysis.
Yeah.
She believes the current cycle could still continue,
Okay.
with Bitcoin reaching new all-time highs before any major correction.
So what kind of price target is she looking at?
She has a specific target,
Okay.
$420,900 by November 17th, 2025.
Wow, that's a pretty substantial jump from where we are now.
It is.
But wait, I thought Stacker predicted Bitcoin would eventually reach $10 million.
That's right.
So how do we reconcile those two predictions?
Well, it's important to remember that those predictions operate on different time frames.
Right.
Stacker's $10 million target is a long-term projection,
Yeah.
potentially years or even decades away.
Okay.
Casey's prediction is focused on the current market cycle, which could play out over the next couple of years.
Right, so short-term versus long-term.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense. So we have these conflicting predictions.
Yeah.
A potential shooting star suggesting a major correction is coming, and analysts like Crypto Casey, who are still bullish,
Right.
seeing further upside potential before any major downturn.
Yeah, the market is definitely sending mixed signals right now.
It is. So how do we make sense of it all?
Well, I think we need to zoom out a little bit
Okay.
and consider the broader market context.
All right, let's widen our lens a bit.
Yeah.
What's happening in the overall economy and in other markets that might shed some light on this whole Bitcoin debate?
Okay, well, let's start with the G10 currencies.
Okay, before we dive into that,
Sure.
just remind me which currencies make up the G10 again.
No problem.
I always mix them up.
It's a lot to keep track of.
Yeah?
So we have the US dollar, the euro, the Japanese yen,
Okay.
the British pound, the Australian dollar, the Canadian dollar,
Mm-hmm.
the Swiss franc, the Swedish krona,
Okay.
the Norwegian krona, and the New Zealand dollar.
Quite a mouthful.
It is.
All right, so what are these G10 currencies telling us right now?
Well, we're seeing a bit of a mixed bag,
Okay.
which kind of reflects the uncertainty in the global economy right now.
Yeah.
But one thing that stands out is that the US dollar
Yeah.
has recently reached a 2-year high against other major currencies.
Okay, so what does that tell us?
It suggests that investors are seeking safety and stability
Okay.
amid geopolitical tensions and
Finance.
economic concerns.
So the U.S. dollar is still seen as a safe haven.
It seems to be.
In times of turmoil, does this impact Bitcoin at all?
That's a good question, and there's definitely debate about it.
Yeah.
Some people believe that Bitcoin, with its decentralized nature and limited supply,
Right.
could eventually challenge the US dollar's dominance
Right.
as a global reserve currency.
Hmm.
But others argue that Bitcoin is still too volatile
Yeah.
and speculative
Wow.
to be considered a true safe haven.
So it's like a battle for supremacy is brewing.
Yeah, you could say that.
The old guard versus the new disruptor.
It's a dynamic that'll be interesting to watch play out.
Absolutely. Okay, so we talked about the U.S. dollar being strong.
Right, right.
What about some of the other G10 currencies?
Oh, while the US dollar is showing strength,
Yeah.
we are also seeing some weakness in other major currencies.
Okay, which ones are struggling?
Well, the British pound, for example,
Okay.
has declined to a 14-month low.
Hmm.
This is likely due to ongoing concerns
Yeah.
over the UK's economic outlook. Right.
Which has been impacted by Brexit and other factors.
So even though the US dollar is strong,
Yeah.
there are still pockets of weakness
Got
in
it.
other major economies.
Right. And it's important to note that these currency movements
Yeah.
can be influenced by a lot of different factors.
Right.
economic data releases,
Yeah.
central bank policy decisions, political events,
Right.
even just shifts in investor sentiment.
Right. It's like a giant puzzle where all the pieces are constantly moving
Exactly.
and interacting.
Yeah.
Okay, so what should we be paying attention to in the coming weeks?
Well, keep an eye on upcoming central bank meetings,
Okay.
especially the U.S. Federal Reserve.
Yeah, the Fed.
Their decisions on interest rates can have a big impact
Right.
across global markets.
Yeah, they're the big player in the room.
They are. What about economic indicators?
Yeah, are there any specific data points we should be watching?
Yeah. Pay attention to things like employment data,
Okay.
inflation rates,
Yeah.
GDP growth across the G10 countries.
Okay.
These can provide valuable insights
Right.
into the health of the global economy.
Okay, so we have this dance between Bitcoin's potential rise,
Yeah.
the warnings of a possible market correction,
Uh-huh.
and now these mixed signals coming from the G10 currencies.
Right. It's a lot to process.
It is.
But there's one more layer that I think we need to consider.
Okay, give me.
The rise of AI and automation. Well, okay. AI, that's a whole other can of worms.
It is.
How is AI already changing the game in the crypto world?
Well, we're starting to see the emergence of AI-powered trading platforms
Interesting.
that allow people to automate their crypto trading strategies.
Okay, so instead of trying to time the market yourself,
Right.
you can let an AI do it for you.
Exactly.
That sounds both exciting and terrifying.
It does have the potential to be both.
Yeah.
Crypto Casey even highlighted one called Go Baby Trade.
Okay.
It's an example of how AI is already making its mark.
And this is just the beginning, I imagine.
I think so, yeah.
What about AI's impact on the broader economy?
So Stecker made a really interesting point about this.
Okay.
They argue that AI and robots, by their very nature, are going to lead to deflationary pressures, regardless of what happens with Bitcoin.
I see what they're saying.
Yeah.
So if robots can produce goods and services more efficiently than humans,
Right.
that should naturally drive prices down,
Exactly.
which leads to deflation.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. But it also raises some questions about
Yeah.
the future of work and wages
Absolutely.
and the overall structure of the economy.
Huge question.
Huge questions that we're going to have to grapple with.
We are.
So we've covered Bitcoin's potential dominance,
Yeah.
the possibility of market correction,
Uh-huh.
the mixed signals from the G10 currencies,
Right.
and now the looming impact of AI.
It's a lot.
My head is spinning.
It is a lot to process.
Yeah, but that's what makes these deep dives so valuable,
I agree.
right? We're exploring these like really important trends
Yeah.
that are shaping the future of finance and the economy.
Absolutely.
So where do we go from here?
Mm.
What are the key takeaways for our listener?
I think the big takeaway is that while Bitcoin's future dominance is not guaranteed,
Right.
it's clear that it's a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah.
It has the potential to reshape financial markets, influence investment decisions,
Yeah.
and even challenge our fundamental assumptions about value and economic growth.
Okay, that's a pretty powerful takeaway.
It is.
Anything else our listeners should be pondering?
Well, let's bring it back to Andrew Tate's initial question.
Okay.
What happens to the economy if Bitcoin becomes the single best investment?
Right.
And I think even if Bitcoin doesn't become the dominant investment,
Yeah.
it's clear that the world is entering this new era of deflationary pressures
Right.
driven by technological advancements like AI and automation.
Right.
So this raises a really crucial question for our listener.
Okay, what is it?
If deflation is in fact inevitable,
Yeah.
what are the best strategies for navigating this new economic reality? That is a great question.
The question we're all going to have to figure out.
Yeah, it feels like we're just scratching the surface of a much bigger conversation here.
Absolutely.
Okay, so what are some resources our listener could explore?
Well, I would highly recommend reading Safety and Amos's book,
Okay,
The Bitcoin Standard.
the Bitcoin Standard.
It provides a really compelling case for Bitcoin's role in a sound monetary system,
Okay,
and it challenges a lot of conventional economic assumptions.
great suggestion. What about Stacker? How can people follow their work?
You can follow Stacker on social media. They're pretty active on there, and you can get a lot of great insights.
Awesome. And if our listeners are feeling really adventurous,
Yeah.
they could even explore these AI-powered crypto trading platforms.
Yeah, like Go Baby Trade.
Right, exactly.
Why not?
I think we've given our listeners plenty to chew on today.
Yeah, a lot of food for thought.
I know I've learned a ton.
Me too.
Any final thoughts before we wrap up part 1 of this deep dive? I think the future of finance is being written right now. So stay curious, stay informed,
Yeah.
and most importantly, stay engaged.
Love it, well said. This deep dive has been truly eye-opening.
It has been.
Thanks for guiding us through it.
My pleasure.
And to our listeners, stay tuned for part 2, where we're going to be exploring even deeper, more philosophical implications of a Bitcoin and AI-driven future.
Yeah, things are going to get really interesting.
Buckle up.
We're going to be tackling questions about privacy, security, power,
Ooh.
and even the nature of consciousness itself.
It's going to get deep.
It's going to get deep. It's interesting to think about how all of this, like the rise of Bitcoin, the potential for deflation, the increasing influence of AI, how it might change our very understanding of value itself.
Yeah, absolutely. We've been throwing around that word value a lot in this deep dive.
Right.
But what does it actually mean in this context?
Yeah.
I mean, value seems like such a subjective concept.
It is, and that's what makes this so fascinating, right?
Yeah.
In the traditional financial system, value is often equated with price.
Right.
Which is influenced by supply and demand, speculation, all sorts of factors.
Yeah.
But as we've been discussing, Bitcoin kind of introduces this different concept of value.
All right.
One that's more rooted in its inherent properties as a scarce, secure, and easily transferable digital asset.
Right. It's like those meme stocks that went crazy a while back.
Yeah.
Their prices were skyrocketing, but did their underlying value actually change?
Right.
I don't know.
It's debatable.
Yeah, but with Bitcoin, it feels like there's a more fundamental value proposition.
Exactly. Bitcoin's value is derived not just from market sentiment or speculative trading, but from its core features. Its fixed supply, its decentralized nature, its resistance to censorship.
So it's more like digital gold than a traditional currency.
That's a common analogy, and it captures some of Bitcoin's key attributes.
Okay.
But it's important to remember that Bitcoin is also a technology, a protocol, a network. Its value is derived not just from its scarcity, but also from its utility as a medium of exchange and a store of value.
Okay, so we have this new form of value emerging with Bitcoin.
Yeah.
But how does AI fit into this evolving landscape?
Well, AI is obviously impacting pretty much every aspect of our lives these days.
It really is.
And one of the most profound ways it might reshape our concept of value is through its impact on work and productivity. If machines can perform tasks that were previously done by humans more efficiently and at a lower cost, what does that mean for the value of human labor?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is a big one.
Are we heading towards a world where robots take all the jobs?
Right.
And humans are left with nothing to do?
Yeah, it sounds like a dystopian sci-fi movie.
It does, but it feels like it could actually happen.
It's a valid concern.
Yeah.
And it's a topic we'll likely be grappling with for years to come.
Right.
But not everyone sees it as a purely negative scenario. Some experts believe that AI, rather than replacing humans entirely, will actually augment our abilities, freeing us up to focus on higher-level tasks that require creativity, critical thinking, emotional intelligence.
Right, the kinds of things that machines aren't so good at.
Exactly.
So instead of competing with robots, we'll be collaborating with them.
Yeah, it's a more optimistic perspective.
I like that image a lot better than the whole robots take over the world scenario.
Yeah, I think a lot of people do.
Okay, so if AI can handle the mundane, repetitive work, humans are free to focus on innovation, problem solving, building deeper connections, the kinds of things that drive real progress.
Exactly.
Okay, but how do we measure or quantify this new kind of value in a world where AI is blurring the lines between human and machine labor?
Yeah.
I mean, do our traditional economic indicators even make sense anymore?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And it's one that economists, philosophers, technologists are actively debating.
Okay.
Some believe that traditional metrics like GDP, which focus primarily on material output, might become less relevant in an AI-driven economy.
So we might need entirely new ways to measure economic output.
Yeah.
And societal well-being.
Exactly.
Ways that account for things like creativity, innovation, and even happiness.
I think so.
It's a fundamental shift in how we define progress itself.
It really is.
It's mind-blowing. It feels like we're on the cusp of a paradigm shift.
Yeah.
In how we think about the economy, society, even what it means to be human.
I think you've captured the essence of it.
Yeah.
The convergence of Bitcoin, AI, and other emerging technologies is forcing us to reevaluate our most fundamental assumptions.
Totally. And that's both exciting and a little bit daunting.
It is. It's a lot to wrap our heads around.
This deep dive has taken some serious twists and turns.
It has.
We started with Andrew Tate's provocative question about Bitcoin.
Right.
And we've ended up contemplating the very meaning of value and progress in an AI-driven world.
It's all connected.
It really is. So as we wrap up part 2 of this deep dive, what are some key takeaways for our listener?
Well, first and foremost, I would encourage our listener to embrace a mindset of lifelong learning.
Okay.
The pace of technological advancement is accelerating.
Yeah.
And the only way to stay ahead of the curve is to be constantly curious, seeking out new information, challenging our existing beliefs.
It's like we're all students again.
Yeah.
But this time the curriculum is the future itself.
Exactly. And along those lines, I would also encourage our listener to develop their critical thinking skills.
Okay.
We're bombarded with information from all directions these days.
Yeah, especially online.
Right. It's crucial to be able to discern fact from fiction,
Right.
to evaluate different perspectives, and to form our own informed opinions.
It's easy to get swept up in the hype or the fear. It is. Especially when it comes to things like Bitcoin and AI.
Exactly.
You need to stay grounded in reality while also keeping our minds open to new possibilities.
Well said. And finally, I would encourage our listener to find ways to actively participate in shaping the future.
Okay. How can they do that?
This could mean investing in cryptocurrencies, experimenting with AI tools,
Yeah.
or simply engaging in thoughtful conversations about these topics with friends, family, and colleagues.
I love that.
Our collective choices will determine the path we take.
So we're not just passive observers in this grand experiment.
No, we're not.
We all have a role to play in creating the future we want to see.
Exactly, and that's what makes this such an exciting time to be alive.
It does.
We're witnessing the birth of a new era,
Yeah.
and the possibilities are truly limitless.
It's true, but it's also up to us to shape those possibilities in a way that benefits humanity as a whole.
Couldn't agree more.
Okay, that's a perfect note to end part 2 on.
It is.
And to our listeners, stay tuned for part 3, where we'll dive even deeper into the philosophical rabbit hole.
Oh, yes.
We'll be exploring some of the ethical and philosophical implications of a Bitcoin and AI-driven future. Questions about privacy, security, power, and even the nature of consciousness itself. It's going to get deep.
Looking forward to it.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
Yeah.
From Bitcoin's potential to disrupt traditional investments, to AI's impact on the future of work,
Right.
and even like our understanding of value itself.
It's been quite a journey.
It really has, but there's one more layer I'm really eager to explore.
Okay.
The ethical and philosophical implications
Right.
of this Bitcoin and AI-driven future we're hurtling towards.
Yeah, those are some big questions.
They are. So let's dive into the deep end of the philosophical pool, shall we?
Let's do it.
What are some of the big ethical and philosophical dilemmas we're facing?
Well, a great place to start, I think, is with privacy.
Okay, privacy.
As we move towards this world where more and more of our lives are transacted online,
Right.
Our finances, our communications, our very identities,
Yeah.
the question of who controls our personal data becomes really important.
It's a question that's been on my mind a lot lately.
Yeah.
I mean, we've already seen with social media and these massive data breaches how vulnerable our information can be.
Absolutely.
And it feels like things are only going to get more complex with Bitcoin and AI in the mix.
Right. And with Bitcoin, while transactions are pseudonymous, meaning they're not directly linked to your real-world identity,
Okay.
they are recorded on a public blockchain that anyone can view.
Right.
So it raises questions about how truly private those transactions are, especially as governments and other entities develop increasingly sophisticated tracking and analysis techniques.
So it's like a trade-off, right?
Yeah.
You gain financial sovereignty with a Bitcoin.
Right.
The ability to transact without intermediaries or censorship. But you might be sacrificing some degree of privacy in the process.
That's one way to look at it. It's
Yeah.
a tension we'll need to navigate carefully as Bitcoin adoption grows.
Right. And with AI, the privacy concerns are perhaps even more profound.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine a world where facial recognition technology is ubiquitous.
Right.
Powered by AI algorithms that can track our movements, identify our emotions, even predict our behavior.
It's a little bit creepy.
It feels like we're teetering on the edge of a surveillance state, straight out of a dystopian sci-fi novel.
It's a valid concern.
It is. Is that the future we're headed towards?
Well, I certainly hope not.
Yeah.
But I think it's why we need to have these conversations now,
Right.
before these technologies become so entrenched that it's too late to course correct.
Right. We can't just sleepwalk into this future.
No, we can't.
We need to be actively shaping it.
Exactly.
Okay, so privacy is a big one. What other ethical concerns are on your radar?
Well, another key concern is security.
Okay, security.
As we become more reliant on digital systems for our finances, our infrastructure, even our personal safety,
right?
How do we protect ourselves from cyber attacks, hacks, and other forms of digital warfare?
It feels like the stakes are getting higher all the time.
They are.
I mean, we're already seeing ransomware attacks crippling businesses.
Right.
Election interference, undermining democracies, all sorts of malicious activity online.
Yeah, and with Bitcoin, there's this added risk of losing your private keys.
Right.
Which are essential for accessing your funds.
It's like losing the combination to a safe that contains your life savings.
It's a very apt analogy.
It is. Okay, so we have privacy and security to worry about. What about the balance of power?
That's another crucial question.
Yeah.
Technology often has the effect of concentrating power.
Right.
Whether it's in the hands of corporations, governments, or even the tech-savvy individuals who control the algorithms.
Yeah. How does the rise of Bitcoin and AI shift those power dynamics?
Well, Bitcoin, by its very nature, aims to decentralize power.
Okay.
Taking it away from central banks and governments and putting it back in the hands of individuals.
Right. The whole be your own bank ethos.
Exactly.
That's what attracted so many people to Bitcoin in the first place.
It is. But as we discussed earlier, there are still questions about how truly decentralized Bitcoin is in practice. And with AI, there's a real risk that power could become concentrated in the hands of the few who control the algorithms and the massive data sets that fuel these systems.
So it's possible that we're just trading one form of centralized power for another.
It's definitely a possibility.
Instead of governments and banks controlling our money, it'll be tech giants and AI developers calling the shots.
That's the concern.
So how do we prevent that from happening?
Well, I think we need to promote open source development, data transparency, and ethical guidelines for the development and deployment of AI systems.
Yeah, we need to make sure these powerful technologies are being used for good.
Absolutely.
Not for control or exploitation.
Right, and that's not going to happen by accident.
It's not.
We need to be intentional about it.
Absolutely. Okay, so we've talked about privacy, security, power, all these huge ethical considerations.
Yeah.
But I feel like all of this leads to what might be the most profound question of all.
Okay, what's that?
What does it mean to be human in a world increasingly shaped by machines?
Wow, that's a big one.
It is, I have to admit, that question both fascinates and terrifies me.
Yeah, I get that.
I mean, if machines can learn, adapt, even create, what sets us apart as humans?
Yeah, are we just biological algorithms destined to be outpaced by our own creations?
It's a question that's been pondered by philosophers for centuries.
It has.
But it takes on a new urgency as AI becomes more sophisticated.
Absolutely.
I feel like we could spend hours unpacking that question alone.
We probably could. This deep dive has taken us on quite a journey.
It has, from Bitcoin's price action to the nature of consciousness itself.
It just goes to show how interconnected all of these things really are.
It does. So as we wrap up this entire deep dive, what are some key takeaways you think our listeners should carry with them?
Well, I would say first and foremost, don't be afraid to ask the tough questions.
Yeah.
Engage in these conversations, even if they feel uncomfortable or uncertain.
Right.
The more we grapple with these issues, the better equipped we'll be to shape a future that aligns with our values.
Absolutely. We can't just passively accept whatever technological future is presented to us.
No, we can't.
We need to be active participants in shaping that future.
I completely agree.
Okay, so ask the tough questions, and then what?
And then be both optimistic and cautious.
Okay.
Optimistic about the potential of these technologies to improve our lives.
Yeah.
But also cautious about their potential risks and unintended consequences.
Hope for the best, prepare for the worst, but always stay engaged.
Perfectly put.
Love it. And any final thoughts?
Just this, the future is not predetermined. It's a canvas waiting to be painted. The choices we make today will determine the world we live in tomorrow.
That's both empowering and a little bit daunting.
It is.
So much responsibility rests on our shoulders.
But it's also an incredible opportunity.
It is. We're at a pivotal moment in human history.
We are.
And we have the chance to shape a future that's more equitable, sustainable, and fulfilling for everyone.
I love that sentiment.
Okay, well, this deep dive has been a truly mind-expanding experience. Thanks for guiding us through this complex and fascinating landscape.
My pleasure.
And to our listener, thank you for joining us on this journey into the heart of the Bitcoin and AI revolution.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
We hope you've learned something new, challenged your assumptions, and maybe even sparked some interesting conversations of your own.
Hopefully.
Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay engaged. The future is waiting to be written, and we need your help to write it.